A city is a really wonderfully interesting system, or set of systems. So a healthy, vibrant city has a myriad of components that are all interacting with each other. So what are the challenges with being able to cite anything that is considered impactful? You need to be able to look at how does it fit within the system. And Syracuse is a reasonably dense city.
A pilot agreement has now been approved for the project at the old Coin Textile site, turning it into a new location for
JMA Wireless. Where is the old Coin Textile plant on Syracuse's south side? It closed back in 2015, but in January, it'll start the transition to 5G manufacturing.
JMA is expected to invest $25 million
and could bring 100 jobs by early 2021.
So this is a game changer for the neighborhood, for the city, and the entire region.
JMA has chosen to not only locate within an area that was really needing development, but then make sure that also the people that lived within those areas have access to good paying jobs. When we look at neighborhoods that have concentrations of poverty or other significant challenges, it's difficult to be able to attract employers or other businesses to those areas. And so the fact that JMA was not only interested in that particular neighborhood, but on top of that also interested in being a part of the neighborhood rather than simply coming in as a self-contained entity, it is a huge boon for the people that live in that area and therefore for all of Syracuse. The scope of the space that they needed led to them talking with Catholic Charities about acquiring their building.
As soon as we heard about the project, we were thrilled. It's a great opportunity for Syracuse. And we immediately worked with the city and told them, we are willing to relocate our shelter for that project. It's worthy of that. What initially drew us to 501 West Genesee Street was a vision that we had to bring all of our housing services onto one site. And Councilor Hogan, we wanted to work with him to reach out to the community. That didn't happen so much, and that was when he told us that he was going to fight the project.
They informed me that they were looking at a site on West Genesee Street, right in the Park Avenue neighborhood. I said that's not a proper place to put a homeless shelter. The history of the Axe House is not one that would fit seamlessly into that neighborhood. So I called the deputy chief of police and he gave me a rundown on the amount of calls, which stunned me. There was over 900 calls to that facility in 1 year. That's, you're averaging 3 calls a day.
911 calls are not all created equal. You can call 911 for a fire, someone could be choking, there could be a medical emergency, or there could be a crime happening. The 911 calls are not a good way to assess whether a site is safe or not.
First of all, I called the mayor, but he said, I'm neutral on this. And I said, you're the mayor of the city of Syracuse and you're neutral about something that affects a neighborhood like this? I go, I've never heard of it. And I told him in no uncertain terms that wasn't going to happen. I would oppose it with everything I got. And that's when I called up Sean and the rest of the group, and we started this groundswell of opposition.
Pat Hogan gave me a quick call, and he said, I'm hearing something about JMA Wireless wanting to move Catholic Charities over here and something to do with the mayor. And I thought, oh, he goes, you're not going to like it. I go, no, I'm not going to like it. When I found out that it was JMA Wireless, Ben Walsh, and Catholic Charities, the 3 of them deciding where it was going to go, I was really upset about that.
My initial reaction was disagreement. A lot of people aren't familiar with the shelter in the way that others of us are.
People went over there to check it out because they wanted to know for themselves, well, how bad is it going to be? They saw men pulling their pants down, defecating in front of them, pulling out their private parts, urinating in front of them. You know, that's the kind of thing that goes on. That's what would be all over here.
We immediately considered we needed to voice our disagreement in a way that was organized. So me and 2 other neighbors created this petition. So we went door to door to door. Either you could sign virtually, you could drop it off at my home, or you could mail it. We made sure there was a way everyone could get to it.
That was great, especially during, COVID was going on. People were wearing masks. People were afraid to answer their doors. So I went down and knocked on doors. I've been in politics for 100 years. It ain't the first time I've knocked on doors. And by this time, the media had caught on to the story.
A debate over the new location for the Catholic Charities homeless shelter in Syracuse is getting strong reaction tonight from neighbors.
Many neighbors on the near west side say they don't want the shelter in their backyard.
It won't be safe. There's no way that they can police it 24/7.
It's not just it sounds like, oh, a shelter with men who need help, blah, 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 blah. It's not that cut and dry.
The X House is also a place where a person can be inebriated, he can be high, and still be allowed in the place.
It can happen to any of us. We're all just this far away from being homeless. Some unfortunate circumstances, a few bad decisions, and find ourselves on the threshold of the Clinton Street shelter.
People have addiction problems, you got people who have criminal histories, you got people who got mental problems, and you got people who are just predators.
A Syracuse man is jailed tonight on $250,000 bail, accused of trying to rape a Syracuse University student at Oakwood Cemetery.
I wholeheartedly believe level 1, 2, and 3 sex offenders need and deserve treatment. The safety of it is when you put that next to, on top of a residential neighborhood in a park.
Syracuse police say 35-year-old Kenneth Kaufman was naked when he grabbed a Syracuse University student, forced her to the ground, and tried to rape her.
That man, at least at that time, had the shelter listed as his primary residence. And that was when things really took off.
We do our best to mitigate risks, and that man was an exception. That's not what most of our shelter guests are like.
A day after that assault occurs, we see a post on Syracuse.com that they're going to be hosting a series of 4 town hall meetings.
That attack happened at Oakwood Cemetery. It did not happen at the shelter, and it doesn't have anything to do with the decision to hold public input about the relocation of a shelter. So that was always going to happen.
We were always planning, as part of our feasibility phase, to have community meetings, always. And Councilor Hogan knew that on January 21st.
People from all over the neighborhood showed up, and people that weren't even in our neighborhood came, because they have seen the positive changes over the years. The Park Avenue neighborhood, it was more of an affluent neighborhood at one time. Years went by, people could not afford these huge mansions anymore. And, the automobile industry took over a lot of the homes. They bought the houses, let them rot, knocked them down, cut the curbs illegally, and they used them as parking lots. In around 2005, there was a resurgence with the Syracuse Initiative funds. And many neighborhoods around the city got a lot of funding.
And I used to drive through that neighborhood all the time. It was a beat up, dilapidated, forlorn neighborhood. It looked like a neighborhood that nobody cared about. Over the years, driving through it, I noticed all of a sudden this new energy in there. There was a lot of young people buying these old houses. I put in the first garden down at the corner, and then I put every single garden in. And people were like, what are you gonna do in that for? It's like, nobody cares. I'm like, I care. I wanna see something pretty when I come around the corner. It's like, I'm not the type of person that is just a mouth where I'm like, I don't like that, I don't want that person moving here, I don't like this, blah, 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 blah. I'm the type of person who gets down in the dirt, I will do it. If I want to see something change, I will make it happen.
We don't do anything without community support. We can't run a shelter without support from the neighborhood. It's just not even possible. So it was always our intention to meet with the community and get their input. The public input sessions were hosted at Missio Church, which is in the neighborhood. The community activists helped us, and they came, of course, they came to every meeting, so they were never missed.
So they decided to go through this whole song and dance and call them public meetings, which they should have had beforehand.
Mayor Walsh was certainly insistent, and Catholic Charities was certainly in agreement that when there was enough of a concept to be able to have a valid discussion around, that the neighbors have a chance for input. Some people were under the impression that there were decisions that were made prior to the asking of neighbor input.
I know how things work sometimes. The plan is usually put in place, it's already set in stone, and then they come to the neighbors later on, and they already have their pretty picture and their plan, and then they decide, we're going to tell you what we're going to do.
If that were the case, then certainly there wouldn't be a reason to hold such extensive opportunities for input. But for whatever reason, there were some people that believe that to be true. And I believe for those people that became a barrier to them being able to listen to what was fully being presented to them.
We walked in and it seemed presentation-like. Mr. Malara, who's the CEO of Catholic Charities, he was right at the front at a podium, had these renderings of plans all printed out up on a poster board, and was pretty much ready to give us a presentation. And that really wasn't what any of the attendees were there for.
And so unfortunately, for some people, rather than having a full dialogue, it was a fight.
Catholic Charities, they said that the homeless could easily access the services because they'd be close to downtown.
We did feel that the location, being not far from downtown where there are other services that help the homeless, that was a convenience for our guests.
They kept saying, well, near to services, near to services. They're moving further away and more into residential and business. So even for the residents, it didn't make any sense.
We presented what we wanted to do, and we listened to their concerns. We listened very closely to their concerns.
They said we'll manage it, but they didn't really say we'll manage it. They can't manage it now. It's like, okay, then if you can come in and manage it over here, then how come you're not managing it now?
This would be their third homeless shelter, from Oxford House to South Clinton Street to this. Nothing's ever changed. They've never managed it well.
Our work is hard, and the people we serve, there's a lot of stigma and stereotypes. So yes, we always expect some resistance. By the second meeting, we knew that we weren't in a neighborhood that was going to work with us.
We didn't hear much after that until we begin to have some of our business owners get more involved. And also when we begin to have discussions about legal action.
The restaurateurs in the area, they were up in arms as well. And the car dealerships. We were all in this together because it was going to affect them too.
Catholic Charities had JMA Wireless in their corner, and they're a multi-million-dollar company. So we had some companies that supported us.
We were surprised by the legal action, but it didn't really matter to us because we had already moved on. We knew by the second meeting that we were not going to have a shelter on 501 West Genesee Street, so we stopped all of our development activities, and we started looking for new places. During that week, we started looking for other sites.
Why did we have to work so hard and take the time out of our days and have to go to the meetings to get through to the people who are supposed to be planning these things accordingly?
What was particularly galling to me is the people from outside that community and outside the city who accused the neighborhood of NIMBYism. It's a code word. It means not in my backyard. It's what the rich folks call the working class folks. When some working class community decides, well, you're not going to put that in my neighborhood, why don't you contemplate it for your neighborhood? Which they never do. It's classism, that's what it is. It's classism.
Unfortunately, some of the messaging around this led to a lot of mischaracterizations of people that are struggling with homelessness, and that was troubling. You know, when we see people that are trying to get back on their feet, but are being otherized, that's challenging.
The guests in our shelter, they're members of the community. We see them as that, most definitely. They're our neighbors, and just ordinary people who just do bad decisions, and there they are. They have no place to go. It's interesting because for them it's a big story, and for us it's like, oh, you really don't want us here? Okay. And we haven't looked back. We're looking forward. We run towards things that other people run away from.
I am a social worker. I work with varying populations every day of my life for the last 12 years, and that has included people who are homeless. It has nothing to do with how much home someone has. I think what this was a reflection of city planning and who gets to decide what a city landscape looks like. You know, this only started because a $1 million corporation decided we don't want to be next to or share space where the shelter is now. And our politicians said, okay, for 100 jobs. They said, okay, we'll move them. And that happened a year before any of us knew this was happening. And then we were, as a small city neighborhood with our own struggles, expected to carry that burden. And I will never think that's fair or okay. I don't think any city neighborhood should be asked to carry a 100-bed shelter on top of other services. And I just think it's a good conversation of who gets to decide what a city looks like. And I think residents should get to have a say in that.